everybody. Dan Illman, Mike Beer with the DRF Race of the Day, presented by DRF Bets. Our race of the day for Friday, October the 21st. Race number 8 at Keeneland. Third level allowance on the turf at about a mile and a 16th for fillies and mares. Big purse, $130,000. Let's take a look at this overflow field. Please scan the QR code for Race of the Day access on mobile. It is a big and bulky field, Mike. We got 12 in the body of the race. The 13 Phantom Vision isn't also eligible. The 14 and 15 are MTOs. And the 6 Scottish Star looked good off a long layoff, winning at Saratoga for Pletcher.
Yeah, Pletcher decided to bring this horse back from the layoff on the grass, a surface she had never run on before, but she seemed to handle it pretty well, Dan. 91 buyer, won pretty easily.
Now, she did not make the lead in that race. There was a runaway speed that opened up a big early advantage. Scottish Star was tracking. There's no big early speed in here. Timeform US believes that Scottish Star, who won that last race, not only in her turf debut, but in her North American route debut, can get to the front. Do you concur?
Can she? Yes. Will she be on the lead in here? That I'm less sure about. I do think they're going to go forward with her again. And we'll just see. If the pace is slow, certainly she could be cutting it, Dan. There's not a ton of pace in this race.
A horse that has shown a little bit of speed in the past is going to be stretching out in her second start of the form cycle. That's the number 1 Serrania for Brad Cox. And you're getting Brad Cox and John Velasquez at 20-1 on the morning line, coming off a race at Kentucky Downs over a demanding turf course against a good horse. The winner of that race came back to run second in the Grade 3 Franklin at Keeneland with an 83 buyer. Stretching out, she should be forwardly placed, and she has a couple of back races.
Yeah, she does. You know, I was very conflicted about what to do with her in here, Dan, because I was her biggest fan going back to early last year. I really thought there was a chance she could turn out to be really good and be one of the better 3-year-old turf fillies last year. That never quite happened. And, you know, so far her campaign this year's been limited and it's been, you know, a little bit underwhelming. But I still think she could get a good trip in here. And at some kind of big price, I'm almost going to have to use her.
So Brad Cox at 20-1 on the morning line. The 2 Arm Candy, Steve Asmussen, 15-1 on the morning line. And this filly bears watching because this is arguably her favorite turf course. 2 of her 3 lifetime wins have come at Keeneland, and her most recent start was her first race off a significant layoff. Let's watch that effort. It was a stakes race at Remington Park, and all in all, the trip was there. She was able to save ground in behind the lead. She's going to bull her way out in the stretch, and she's going to finish an okay third. Off the layoff, she earned a solid 81 buyer. She can build off this performance.
She can. You're right that she has, you know, some faster races to get to. The horse that is beating her here also beat her before the layoff at Sam Houston. She does like this turf course, Dan. I sort of wondered if she was good enough to beat a field like this. I know it's only an allowance race, but this has a sort of a stakes quality field here, and I wonder if she's good enough to beat these horses.
She did win second off the layoff during the fall meet of 2021 at Keeneland in a second level allowance race. Now, Gladys is the 3, and Gladys has, I guess, excuses for the Grade 3 Weah last time out. Not only was it a mile and 3/8, and she's run okay at longer distances in the past, but it was over a very wet turf course. I don't mind her cutting back in distance, and I think the firmer, the better.
Firmer ground you're right about that, could be key for this filly. I wonder if cutting back is really what she wants. I mean, I guess she does have enough speed, though. The pace projector didn't really have her up there among the leaders, but I think she could be, even with this cutback in distance, Dan, and maybe that kind of a trip would really help her chances.
She was up close to an extremely slow pace 2 starts back. That was a race where none of the closers had a chance. In a Hurry just got loose and walked the dog through almost a 53-second half mile. Polka Mucha is up next. This is the number 4 coming out for Bill Mott. 10-1 on the morning line. Great price, great horseman. This one didn't do much running last time out in the restricted 1 Dreamer. It was just a race where she was out-sprinted from the start.
Yeah, never got involved there. Another one of those, you know, Kentucky Downs races where I just feel like you want to be forgiving for the horses who don't perform there, especially when that horse's prior races are actually pretty good. And I thought all 3 of her starts for Mott when he took over in April over this course, I thought she ran well in all those races, particularly the win 2 starts back at Saratoga. That trip worked out for her, but she really ran that day. Big, strong finish from her that day.
I agree with everything you say. I don't mind the recent dull running line simply because it was at Kentucky Downs and some horses hate it. And like you, I thought she benefited from that good trip, but she really fired at Saratoga like a filly that was coming into her own. If you can just throw out the last race, she's got a shot in here at a price. Bella Gamba is the number 5. She's coming down from Woodbine, and she faced a good group last time out in the Grade 2 Canadian. The third place finisher of that race was placed second via DQ in the E.P. Taylor with a 95 buyer. She's another one that has shown some ability, and she would benefit if the pace is solid up front.
I thought she would need a little bit of pace, but I found it hard to really knock anything she's done, Dan, since she's arrived here. Only one win since she got here last summer, but it's mostly stakes races. She's shown up and run well, and every one of those races, her figures say she's a contender in here. I really couldn't knock this horse.
The 6 Scottish Star is your morning line favorite, Louise Saez and Todd Pletcher. She is a Group 1 winner on dirt in her native Argentina, but she won her turf debut at Saratoga off of a significant layoff. This is a second-level allowance race. You see the runoff leader on the lead. Scottish Star relaxed about 7-8 lengths off the lead, inhales this horse in the stretch. There's just not a lot of running going on behind Scottish Star. She ran well.
She did. This wasn't a particularly strong field, but, you know, she did run well. And it, you know, was sort of interesting just to see Pletcher come back and point her to this kind of a race. He, you know, prior to running her here, she had been training really well on the turf. So I don't think it was a huge surprise that she handled it and ran the race. But she also had a very, very good trip against a field that I thought was only okay. Dan, I think this is tougher, and she's the morning line favorite.
Pyramid Princess is the number 7. This is a filly going dirt to turf. Didn't really run much on the dirt last time out. I think she might be slightly better on the turf. That being said, some of her numbers are light. And you're right, this allowance feels like sort of a stakes class race, so it's a giant step up for her. She'll be a big price.
She's going to be a big price. And she's just, based on what she's done so far anyway in the 4 turf stars, she's just going to have to run the race of her life. She did show, you know, back early in March that she can get forward, though, and run a pretty good race. I don't know if she'll be able to make the lead in here, but maybe they should try it.
How about the number 8, Sunny One? I wouldn't be surprised if she drifts a little bit off her 6-1 morning line. She ran in a tough spot last time out. Not only was it at Kentucky Downs, but it was a graded stakes race won by Delika, who's in raging form. And the runner-up Princess Grace is probably one of the best top 10 filly and mare turf horses in the country. She came back and ran 3rd in the Grade 1 First Lady at Keeneland with a 96 buyer. Sunny One was only beaten 2 lengths that day, and her prior start at Indiana Grand was a really nice step forward.
It was. I feel like she didn't beat a great field off that little layoff there at Indiana, but she ran a nice race that day to win easily. I thought she ran fine last time. I didn't think she was necessarily that difficult to make a case for, Dan, when they ran her here back in the spring. She beat Pocamucha that day. She ran pretty well in that race. She got a good trip too, but she ran.
So a similar situation as Pocamucha, has run well at Keeneland, did so at a big price in that second-level allowance, coming off a race at Kentucky Downs where maybe she was not at her best. The 9 is Disappearing Act. This one, another one, coming out of a Kentucky Downs race. They really tried to stretch her out in the ladies' marathon. She has run well at longer distances in the past. Now, cutting her back, she's run well in shorter distance races. I'm just not sure where she fits right now from a distance standpoint.
I'm not sure about that either. And I'm not her biggest fan, Dan. She's run well in several different races. But even going back to some of those races in Southern California last year, you know, she was competitive, but I wasn't seeing excuses for her not to win a couple of times there. I'm not sure that I think this horse is that good.
Now, listen, that ladies' marathon last time out, she was just simply overmatched. I even think it was the distance. Look at Family Way, the runner-up. She came back to run 3rd in the Grade 1 Rodeo Drive in Santa Anita with a 91 buyer. Her prior race against listed stakes horses at Lone Star they're okay. I just am not sure where she is from a form standpoint. At 20-1, there are certainly worse 20-1 shots in the world. Let's move on to the number 10 in this race. And the number 10 is Princess Fazia. And Princess Fazia is going to be making her first start for Michael Maker. And we've said it all the time on these shows. When Maker gets a horse, whether it's off the claim or off a private purchase or off a simple trainer change, they seem to do well. This horse had the claim voided last time out for 62.5 when beaten by Pocamucha at Saratoga. I thought all in all, the trip was there for her.
Yeah, I did too. She ran fine in there. Just wasn't quite good enough. Her races 2 and 3 back, however, really had excuses in those races and ran way better than it looks. I still think she's a little bit of one of those mares, Dan. What you see is what you get. What's on the paper is what she is, and she's pretty good, actually. And she's also a pretty tactical horse, so there could be a trip for her in here. There are things to like about her. I think the 5-1 morning line's way too short, but if she drifts off that, I'm using her.
The 11 is Perseverancia, making her first start for a very good trainer in Cherie DeVoe. Now, this filly's taking a big step up in class off this victory at Woodbine, going a 1 turn 9 furlongs over the E.P. Taylor turf course. She was entered for a $40,000 tag in this race, but she's able to weave her way to the outside and run these horses down. A couple of minor next out winners in here. The runner-up would win for the 40 with a 78 buyer.
Yeah, I liked this win from her. There were a couple of races going back to early last year. She ran second down at Gulfstream Park, and then after a little bit of a break, came back and broke her maiden up at Woodbine. And I thought she ran really well in both of those races. And it just sort of felt like, there was something there if they could ever get her to put everything together. And that maybe hasn't happened yet, Dan, but she's still pretty lightly raced. I don't like this post, but I think she's a little underrated.
The 12th Candaceau has the speed to perhaps extricate herself from a very difficult outside post position. Now, she didn't show it last time out of Kentucky Downs. I just think she got Kentucky Downsed against a lot better horses. The runner-up would come back to hit the board in the Franklin with an 83 buyer. Throw that race out, you're left with 2 solid wins where she was close to the pace at Ellis Park. Maybe not the fastest races in the world, but she's a filly with some upside.
Yeah, she's progressive. I guess she did at least improve a little bit to win those races. 2 and 3 starts back. If you want to be forgiving of that grade 3 last time, I can get behind that. Maybe this is a better spot for her. I'm not sure how good she is, Dan. We'll see. I thought she had to improve to win here, but maybe she'll be a price.
Before the layoff, she was graded stakes placed, albeit with a very good trip against maybe not the strongest field in the Soaring Softly in 2021, but she handles turf and middle distances just fine. Phantom Vision, the 13th, and also eligible. I do think she has to improve to win, although if she gets into this race, Mike, she's going to be forwardly placed.
Yeah, even with the outside draw, she could probably make the early lead. I still think she's a sprinter, but she's another horse who has some upside and has run some good races.
Before we get to our top selections, please click the subscribe button on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for all the latest DRFTV handicapping previews. Top pick time for our Friday race of the day is presented by DRF Bets. You're going with Bill Mott, the 4 Poca Mucha. Again, excuse last time at Kentucky Downs, like the win at Saratoga. I'm using her.
Yeah, I just felt like I want to give her another chance. And I was, I've been sort of following her since the Keeneland race here in the spring. I thought she ran really well when she was second that day. And, I'm just going to be forgiving of that last race. Maybe it's just a sign that she's not quite good enough. But I'm going to forgive her because it was at that track.
The same exact, a different order. I like the way Scottish Star came off the layoff to win, and I like her tactical speed. She'll either sit off the lead as she did last time out, or she'll go right to the front. If she runs back to that last race, she's going to be tough. Unfortunately, the odds will be depressed. 4, 6, 10, 5 for Mike, 6, 4, 8, 3 for me. It's your Friday race of the day. It's at Keeneland. Good luck.